Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to BBallBreakdown and Court Call with Ronnie Nunn. Ronnie was a longtime NBA referee and the head of the Referee Association and knows his stuff when we're talking about calls, sports fans. So, Ronnie, let's jump right into this with the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Celtics. Lots to go through. And give me your impressions right now on that first foul, Olynyk versus Love, that caused the injury to Love.
As you know, in basketball, sometimes there are some clamps, and particularly in moving, and particularly in stationary positioning while rebounding. In most cases, you will see that. But when a player is moving, it also makes him vulnerable. One of the two are vulnerable depending on how they are moving. And in this case, obviously, Love got the worst of this situation. I don't think it was something on purpose, even though there was definitely a purposeful foul in terms of holding on the clamp. But I think the location and the way they were moving, Love became in a position that he got his shoulder disconnected, and that's really the unfortunate situation of a clamp. I mean, there was no problem calling the foul. You see this often sometimes as two players go for a ball and they clamp each other. You can recognize who the culprit is in that. But in this case, the situation of how his arm was caught in there resulted in this unfortunate injury.
I agree. Now, so that they call the foul. Olynyk has been at times probably too meek and not very aggressive. So it's definitely out of character to think that he would have done this on purpose. Because I don't see a yank at the end. I see him getting clinched to begin with by Love, right? And then
Yes.
I kind of see in his reaction, okay, I'm going to clinch you then to try and get the ball. And so it feels to me like just a real sort of unfortunate happenstance that might not happen once in a million times. But I just can't see any kind of malicious intent by Olynyk on this play.
And also remember, when you watch the video, you see Love is reaching for the ball while he is being clamped. So his body really wants to go towards the ball. He can't go, and his arm's being clamped in a position that affected his shoulder. And you also see this very often. And, of course, the foul is called clearly about it in other situations as well. But I think in this particular instance, your word happenstance is right on and spot on. And it unfortunately resulted in an injury, a very serious one.
And it's really too bad, but the tenor of the game, I think, changed, obviously, right? Now we have Crowder in the papers had said something about the Cavaliers not being very tough, I believe. And we actually caught a little bit before this. I caught a little bit of a play, a screen on Crowder just before the melee that happened. And if you notice, what's your opinion on what Perkins is doing on this screen on Crowder for LeBron James?
Yeah, it looks like he gives a little bit of either a kind of a straight arm, semi minimal punch or something. I mean, you don't know if it's a closed hand, but he extends his arm and hooks into the defender. It happens to be Crowder, and he gets a little shot. Now, whether it's below the stomach or at the stomach, he gives a little bit of a shot. And I think, remember that my point of dealing with pick and rolls is that you need a two set of eyes coverage of this. I would have liked, again, the official at the bottom of the screen to move up towards the top of the key, not at the top of the key, but get a really good vision, move closer, and handle that play, because these are the little nuances of contact in a game that get people PO'd that are playing the game. And you have to get ready to see those things, that they don't blossom into what obviously comes up later on for both these players.
Absolutely. And I'm a conspiracy theorist. I admit it fully. So when I see Perkins waving other guys away like I got the screen, that to me tells me, especially when you know what happened in the very next play down, that he wants to do something and lay up some physicality on Jay Crowder, which then leads us to the next play, which obviously is what everybody was talking about. Crowder is wide open on the left wing here, guarding LeBron. And boom, Perkins takes him out. I guess, is there any other way to describe this?
Yeah, there are some players that are aggressive and play within the guidelines of aggressiveness. And even when they have their neck bowed on demonstrating that they want to show toughness, in this case, we have some people that don't understand what that really is in the game of basketball. And then they create something that's over the boundary line in a physical act. And immediately, I think Officials now go to the monitor as they should to confirm all these actions. But I am sure that I would have made an ejection sign right then. If I had to retract that ejection sign upon looking at the monitor, I would be the first to say, okay, this is what I saw initially, glad for the monitor. But I think sometimes the guys don't want to commit to something that's, unbelievable and that extreme. But having seen so many plays in my career and getting the nature of that contact, to me, it's ejection right away, confirmed by the monitor. And these are kind of what we used to call disruptors to the game, that you don't look at them as a person of disruption, but as an action person of disruption. And you've got to watch their actions. They're going to play a little bit at the line and beyond the line. And as long as you're aware of their style and what they're attempting to do, you can keep them in the boundary and call the fouls and make sure they don't go to anything severe.
Did you happen to see when they were face-to-face and standing off that Perkins made contact with it's very strange when you go frame by frame. It's kind of a finger swipe at Crowder's head. Did you see that? And wouldn't that merited an ejection?
I think if we didn't have the first situation, we might have had maybe just flagrant ones that would be normal. Listen, these men out here are warriors. And they have their style of defending their turf and defending their bodies. And I think it's normal to have some reactions, whether you have a double push or something. And I think those little extra pieces are not, they don't trump the original action. The original action just trumped everything. So I think getting people together, and as long as you don't see any roundhouse swings, I think you're still okay to manage the situation.
Okay, because my conspiracy ears pop up, and I'm thinking that here's a guy that can really defend LeBron pretty well. He's a pest. He's physical. LeBron doesn't like it. So let's get this guy out of the game, or at the very least, let's let him know that, if you're going to do that, we're going to take you down, a little bit. Perkins clearly doesn't have much value on the court except for these kind of fouls at this point of his career. So, I just thought it was a real kind of Bush League move. If it was to try and announce his presence that, we are physical, this is how we're going to show you. That just is silly to me, and it doesn't yield anything positive at all. It doesn't prove anyone's toughness, I don't think. And so if you look at it the other way, where he's simply trying to say, okay, we're not going to let you guard LeBron, and be what you're doing. Because, by the way, remember, he got a jump ball to play before. He was, he's bothering him. So I think it's a real problem, and I don't think this reflects well at all on Perkins. And I feel like, he didn't come out of the game either. I got to check, but that's another thing where, at the very least, you would have thought the coach would have, sat him on the bench.
Physicality is okay as long as it's within the guidelines. Is there closer physicality? Yes. Do people D up greater? Yes. Must you be more vigilant about these type of nuanced plays? That like the Perkins little swipe, you wonder if that was a little shot? Yes. But other than that, ref the game as you have been doing all season long. Those are the habits you want to recommit to, and those are the habits you want to sustain for the players to know nothing has changed.
The next point we bring up then, because there was no ejection, perhaps there's the notion of, okay, this is now open season. There's not going to be a lot of penalties here, or certainly there hasn't been yet. So now we have J.R. Smith, who has been known to get into altercations. He's already been suspended in the playoffs before for throwing elbows, that were premeditated. So here we are, where in the third quarter, you could see him, measure Crowder up. I don't even believe it was his man to begin with. No, he was guarding Bradley. So he measures him up as he comes through the lane. And obviously coaches say, don't let guys cut through the lane unimpeded, and that's okay. But you could see him stare him down and target him. And then absolutely, we all know what happened after the shot went up in the box out. So, Ronnie, tell me, what's your interpretation of this, and how severe was this action by J.R. Smith?
One of the things about experience in the game is to note that, we have a post-up play, and the official on the bottom of the screen is involved in the curl of that play. That play is coming to him. He's in great position. But he's interfered with in this play on what we call the freedom of movement action that goes on. And the freedom of movement is a cutter. And this cutter is no question is interrupted by J.R. Smith, which is obviously Crowder cutting. And he's interrupted on this play, and it's a pretty good bang, which should stop the race right then and there and get that play, particularly after you had an incident involving Crowder, and Perkins or any other Cavalier. And that's when you've got to recognize these issues. These are not play-on issues. You stop the horse race right there. Everybody holds their position, and you blow a whistle on this cut by Crowder. And all of a sudden, no, not only does Crowder, with his momentum, take Smith out, but he takes him all the way out into a place where it's a rebounding situation. And then he gives him another little shove in the back. And, no one's attending. If it was just that alone, we can deal with it. But Smith feels probably, I've been hit twice and nobody's responding. And now, as all pro players do, they will take care of themselves if you don't take care of the game that involves them.
I agree. I think that the shot that Crowder gives him on the rebound to the back, that's the kind of thing that we see all the time. Not usually with the smaller guys. The wing guys usually don't get that. And that could very well be part of the J.R. Smith reaction, is that he's just not normally, the main line of boxing out down there with guys pushing on him like that. There was a lot of question about his intent. I certainly feel like he was trying to hit him, and he was trying to hit him in the face, right?
Yeah, his flailing, it was a reaction. And I think he just went back to flail and didn't know where he was going to hit, but said he was going to definitely hit something. And he goes back and flails. And again, the second part of that sequence, the rebounding thing, would have been no problem if you handled the cut blow. That was a blow that lifted Smith completely from the bottom tip of the circle right over onto the basket. And that's the physicality that we had to address as officials before these other secondary things come into play, because that's what he's remembering. And then the little extra shove was the straw that broke the camel's back. And then, of course, he goes into a real flail that can no longer is going to be adjudicated as a serious matter.
Absolutely. He got 2 games, which I thought was about right. I thought it had to be at least 2 for something like that. And now he's put the Cleveland Cavaliers in a very precarious position, potentially going against the Bulls team without 2 of their starters for a couple games at least. And so that's going to be a real issue for them going forward, and something that a lot of different things could have been mitigated with, had maybe the coaches calm things down, if the referees had seen some of these things. It takes a village here, and I feel like we kind of all got let down a little bit by how that all happened. Well, let's move on real quickly to a game from last night, because I was really concerned about how this play played out at the end of the Hawks-Nets game, where we had a shot clock reset, which was a real curious thing, because obviously the ball didn't hit the rim, the players were confused, and then the shot clock reset on its own. Ronnie, walk us through this and whether you thought this was the correct way to process this play.
Well, I think what was good was that the referees recognized the reset of the clock. And once the clock reset at a time it seemed late to reset, it brought the attention to the whole play. And then they were able to videotape the play as to saying, look, did the ball hit the rim? Obviously not. But what did occur, and I think they were vigilant about it to their credit, was they recognized that the immediate grab of 2 hands of that ball, followed by an immediate deflection of that ball by Lopez, reset the clock to 24 because there was a new possession. And when I look at it, it's very tight, but I would rule in the same way that you can have possession of the ball while you're in the air. As a matter of fact, all rebounders, we're very aware of rebounders, especially when players say we're going to call a timeout on a free throw shot if there's a make or miss. And on the miss, that timeout is looked at the clock when that player is in the air securing that rebound with his hands. Once that occurs, that timeout is good. If they call it then, we will give it at the time that they wanted it, which is at the secure grab of that ball, which is possession.
Okay, so your take on it was that whatever Jeff Teague did to have his hands on the ball was enough of a possession to reset the clock, which I still think is dubious. I kind of follow that. I mean, I guess if he doesn't need to be on the ground with the ball to establish possession, if he could be in the air, then I could see, okay, 2 hands, the ball is starting to move back. You could argue there was a foul there because there is a collision with the shoulders of Brook Lopez. Is this a reviewable play?
This is a reviewable play because of the shot clock, but I think what was good about this play was that there was clear understanding on the floor that there was possession.
Okay. And
even though the camera we're looking at camera shots, and the camera sometimes does not lie, the sense of really being in the game at that time as an official on the ground. You can see when somebody really's got something. And by the way, it was an immediate deflection, and I'm hoping it was a deflection because you could have had a foul easily by Lopez. Yeah.
Well, it ended up being a pretty costly play. Unfortunately, if it was if the shot clock should have been reset correctly, then it did cost the Hawks a chance for a 2-for-1 when they were losing in this game, and it would have been a much more advantageous position for them to be in. Ultimately, they lost in overtime, and it's a really good series now. So at least we're going to benefit from some good basketball. We certainly benefited from some really great knowledge from you, Ronnie, today. So thanks for joining us and giving us that insight into both Olynyk and J.R. Smith and the Hawks. And don't forget, sports fans, at BBallBreakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You win? You win, Ronnie?
Coach, I'm in. Thanks for having me as always.